Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tap In with Tristan. I'm excited about this one. We got a topic that's a little bit outside of my expertise, so to speak. I got a gentleman that I was fortunate enough to build a relationship with over the past few years, and this is an honor to be with him. Before I introduce him, I just wanted to just say, make sure you guys subscribe. Make sure y'all click the notification bell. We get all of the alerts for the new content. Comment, like, and share, and let's build this beautiful platform. I got a gentleman that's going to talk about and break down hockey, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, I got Eric Williams. Say hello, Eric.
Up.
So we got Mr. Eric Williams here, man. He's gonna just give us the full gambit, no holds barred on what goes on in the hockey world. For me, this is gonna be brand new. For some, this might be an old shoe, but it's gonna be something that's going to definitely benefit a lot of young athletes and even parents. So let's share this content. So Eric, let's talk about childhood. What's that look like? When did hockey even get into the fold? And where did we grow up? Talk to us.
So for me, I was kind of born into hockey. My parents were season ticket holders for the Dallas Stars, but hockey in general in Dallas didn't really explode until the Stars moved here. So I was born, my parents were Stars season ticket holders. When I was 3, at the youngest age they would allow you to learn how to skate. My parents signed me up for that. And then when I was 4, when the youngest age they let you play hockey, I started playing. So for me, I was kind of born into it. But for hockey in general in the area of Dallas, it didn't even explode until the Stars moved here.
And what time was that? When did the Stars move here and it kind of just explode in this area?
So the Stars moved here in 1993. And I was born in 1998. So I'm still at the younger ages of hockey being big in Dallas. You know, when they won the cup in 1999, that is the year where we see the most amount of kids that joined hockey is in 1999. So that's when hockey was biggest, is when the Stars were doing well.
So there's a correlation to success from the highest level, even on down. That fair to say?
Yes, there is.
Perfect. So now you're introduced to it. You know, you're a family that really enjoys that sport. What does the grassroots part of this thing look like? You know, those early ages. Is it just recreation? Is it just a hobby? Is it you're seeing like some of the clubs and select teams going on? How does that work?
So grassroots hockey is different between every state, you know, but here in Texas, what that really looks like is you start skating when you're 3. From 4, 5, and 6 is what's called mini mites. And to correlate hockey to basketball, you have mini mites, and that's your 4, 5, 6 years. And then once you hit 7 years, once you're 7 years old, you move up to what's called mites, and that is when your club teams start playing. And that's your club teams in hockey are like your AAU teams. And you have different levels of hockey, and that's when it really starts to get going competitively, is once you're 7 years old.
Are you recognizing that at this young age of the competitive nature starting to level up at 7, or you just still, man, I'm just enjoying this thing?
You don't recognize it when you're 7. And it really comes down to the parents and how competitive they want their kids into it. You know, are the parents spending the money for the private lessons? You know, how much are you on the ice? How many times a week are you on the ice? And that's what it really boils down to in Texas, is when are you going to start really taking it competitively? And that boils down to a lot to your parents.
So would you say that, thank you for that. Would you say that the northern states in the United States, the cold weather states, have an advantage, being that, you know what I mean, like stuff actually freezes and you can actually skate on open water that will be melted in the warm weathers? Do they use that to that advantage, and does that play a part into it, unlike something like Texas?
They do 100%. You know, when they're younger, they get going at a younger age. You know, they can they get out of school, and when the ponds are frozen, they go throw their skates, grab a stick and their gloves, and they go play all afternoon. And they also have the advantage that the hockey is a bigger part of their culture, and that they have more rinks, so they have more accessibility to the ice time. Even when the ponds aren't frozen, they just have that much more accessibility to it than your non-traditional hockey markets, like here in Dallas.
That's awesome. Now, what type of parents do you have? Any siblings that are playing along? What type of parents are you? Because you said the parents play a big role, you know what I mean, in this journey.
When I was younger, my parents weren't necessarily pushing me to play as much. They were more pushing me to, go have fun and play with it and, enjoy it when I was younger. So it really wasn't until I was about 12 when my parents really started pushing me, that, if I wanted to play, competitively, they were going to push me more into it when I was a little bit older. But for me, and this is something that's very unique to hockey, in that, I had always been attracted to being a goalie. And, when I was younger, I always wanted to do it. My parents were like, no, you don't want to do it, And so for me, when I was 12, actually, is when I was like, you know what, I want to push it and really, play goalie. And I was still playing recreationally, and our goalie had gotten injured. And I was like, I'm doing it. I'm playing. And I got some used gear from a friend, went out and played, and did great with it. And my parents were like, all right, if he really wants to play goalie, let him play. And that's when I really got into playing goalie. But what's unique about hockey is that being a goalie is a completely different skill set from being a player, and everything about it looks differently, including the equipment, everything about your training, your coaching, everything about it's different when you're a goalie. So in a way, I started playing goalie when I was actually kind of old for hockey standards, because goalies really, when you're young, is when you start playing goalie. But I had played forward for so long that, it's just completely different.
So goalie, that's fascinating. So goalie is in a sense a team within a team. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it really is fair to say.
Different level of responsibility. What gravitated you to even want to be a goalie? That's a lot. That's a lot on you, man. You have to be sharp. You have to be right pretty much all of the time, or you get a lot of the blame, man. That's a lot.
So there were two things. Number one, and this is what a lot of kids will always say, the equipment looked cool. The equipment always looks cool on the goalies. You come out, you got the big pads. I loved how the goalies had their own helmet, and, they got to paint their own helmet however they wanted. So that was a big part of it. But also for me, what I always liked about playing goalie, especially when I finally got to try, was I liked actually having that responsibility of it lies on me. I actually enjoyed having that pressure and that responsibility. Wow. And I could always kind of, if you want to look for another sports comparison, compare it to either being a pitcher in baseball or a quarterback in football, of having that sole responsibility on your shoulders, because there's no goalies a lot like that, in that with goalie, 90% of what I see has to be stopped. There's almost no other job in sports where 90% of your job is, 90% is what's expected in your job. Even baseball, when you're going to hit, you're hoping to hit 33%. And that's a good average, where hockey, being a goalie, you're expected to stop 90% of the shots you see.
That's a fact, and that's fascinating that you actually asked for that. that's pretty cool. Now let's talk about hockey, you know what I mean, kind of behind the scenes. Would you say it's a sport that a lot of people can gravitate towards? Is it an expensive sport? Is it a cheap sport? Well, from your take, what are we looking at? Just even if you wanted to get involved, and who do you see getting involved?
It's definitely a more expensive sport. There's no way around that. And it's a sport that typically is going to gravitate towards your upper middle class and your upper class because of the price. Once you look at getting gear, just a pair of skates alone, you can get an inexpensive pair for $250, $300. And that alone is outpriced a lot of sports just by your skates alone. But if you get your top of the line skates, you're looking at $1,000 just to get a pair of skates. And that's before you've put any money in any other equipment, where, you look at a sport such as basketball. All you need to play basketball are your shoes and your basketball. And a lot of that can be provided. And even for an expensive pair of basketball shoes, you're still looking at 200 tops, where hockey, that's already outpriced it with one piece of equipment. You haven't even started looking at, all the equipment that's needed. And that's a helmet, gloves, shoulder pads, elbow pads, pants, shin pads. You need sticks. And once you start getting older, your sticks break. So you have to buy new sticks pretty frequently.
That's a fact. You know what I mean? Just off of that alone, you're going to miss out on a good amount of people that might even be interested in that. So with that being said, is there only a certain demographic that you're seeing? Is it, you know what I mean? Are you seeing white, Black, Latino, a combination of all? Are you seeing mainly just a certain demographic from your experience?
In my experience, it's going to be predominantly white. And that's, just due to the fact of where they oftentimes put rinks in general are in your typically more white neighborhoods. When they build a rink in Dallas now, they look at, what are the demographics in that area monetarily. And, if a certain demographic isn't met monetarily, then they oftentimes won't build it because they know the rink won't be successful. Because just to rent a sheet of ice alone for an hour, you're looking at $350 in Dallas. And this is something that differs so much in your non-traditional hockey markets, is because there's less ice, it's more expensive. Where once you get up north, it's a lot easier to build a rink because there's a demographic that plays no matter what. Because it's, you have so many rinks, it's ingrained in their culture up there that, the rinks are already built, number one, and there's so many rinks, the ice is cheaper. So it always depends on your hockey market itself of what demographics playing. Where I've seen when I go up north, and when I actually played in Cleveland, you saw in high school hockey that a lot of schools had teams because there's more rinks, so there was more accessibility to the sport, and it's just more a part of their culture. So and a good way to compare it was, when you start playing Pee Wee football and youth sports in Texas, your football equipment's provided to you, your helmet, your shoulder pads. Where up north, that's provided for you. Where in Texas, once you turn 7 years old, your equipment's not provided for you anymore. So it really starts turning into the responsibility to pay for it.
So that's going to box out a lot of people right off top, and
yeah,
and that would include really all races, but definitely some races more than others. So do you see, even at the highest level, majority of the sport in the NHL, is it predominantly white for people that are not really familiar with it? And if so, have you seen that change over the years to where you are seeing even more minorities in there, or is it pretty much the same?
So over the past 10 years, you've really started to see where it is shifting from being predominantly white to more and more different races playing, because number one, there's been more outreach into it, whereas Nashville's actually built a rink in Antioch, Tennessee, which is not a predominantly white town. And what we've seen is that people in that area are finding a way to play, as well as getting the people that traditionally played hockey.
What demographic lives in this area, Eric?
So in Antioch, it's actually a predominantly Hispanic demographic.
Okay.
And that's what's been very interesting there, is seeing that when they built a rink there, that there are seeing more demographic playing there. And that's a rink that I played in when I was in college. When I was at University of Kentucky, we would go down there to play the teams from Nashville. So you're still getting your traditional demographic, but they're also growing the demographic by putting a rink in a non-traditional town.
So you're seeing, because of the opportunity, you're including more people, and then they're actually finding out that more people actually want to participate. So really, it comes down to a few. This is why it's fascinating, because I think this crosses over into just life in general. Is that fair to say? You have certain people that don't have the opportunity or limited resources to even really try. So it's almost a glass ceiling in certain regards. Is that fair to say?
It is fair to say. And we're seeing that glass ceiling getting broken more and more as teams continue that. NHL teams are continuing more and more community outreach. And the Predators have been one of the best NHL teams at doing that, and having some of the best community outreach in the area to get people to continue to try and play that from your non-traditional towns. And another one that's doing a better job of it now is the New York Rangers, where we have a rink in New York City in Chelsea Pier.
Chelsea Piers, right?
Chelsea Pier. And we see that there's now some rinks in Brooklyn and Queens where, you know, I have a friend that played with me at University of Kentucky, and he said there are some inner city teams now, which we didn't used to see at all. So, and you are now starting to see that matriculate up. Recently in 2018, I believe, the Rangers actually selected an African-American player, Keontae Johnson, in the first round, who played because of some of these outreach programs. And, you know, he came from a single mother. And that was a very big milestone victory for all those programs in the United States, that you see that they are working and you're getting a more demographics playing.
You're opening it up to a thing. So is that, how is that feeling with the tradition? I mean, hockey's been around for quite some time. You're a fairly young man, so this is something that you're seeing a little bit more. Now, some of the older demographic are they riding this new wave? Are they pushing back? Do they like it for the sport just because we're getting all the different talents and maybe even a better product because we're including a lot more because of the resources given? Or is it, nah, we don't really like it that way? Or you get kind of a mixture?
It's definitely, I would say, a mixture. You know, I would say 95% of the time, people are excited to see everybody playing hockey and loving the sport. Because more than anything, hockey players love to see the sport grow.
That's awesome.
And that's one of the coolest things about it, is you're seeing the sport grow.
Right.
And when I was in Ohio, we saw some of the non-traditional markets for hockey that had teams. And granted, they still have a long ways to go in terms of skill because they're so new.
They're brand new to the thing. Like hockey is probably the hardest team sport. There's so many elements to be efficient and effective play. You have to skate. You have to be able to handle the puck. You have to be able to handle yourself against all of these, you know, this physicality. And then you got to know how to fight. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of elements to it for you to be an efficient player and get ice time. So I can definitely see them behind the ball. They don't have it, but hearing that they have the opportunity is fascinating. This is new to me. So I really appreciate you sharing this and giving us free game. Now, you have this business element that goes with it, right? You have certain teams that pay, meaning that the parents have to pay quite a bit of money. But to my understanding, there are also sponsorships that companies provide for certain teams, certain schools. Is this regional? Is this the United States? Is this certain ages? Please tell me.
It leans to be towards being regional, and your markets such as a Detroit, a lot of their teams that are club teams when you're younger, they're actually sponsored by organizations such as, you have a team called Little Caesars, and there's a team named Victory Honda, and there's all these different teams that are sponsored. And so it brings the cost down to play a lot. And that's where we're seeing a lot of success as well. But it's so regional in that, you know, that Detroit area has those teams, whereas Dallas still doesn't have that yet. And that's where we have to find a way to continue to grow the sport and make it a part of the culture so that we can continue to grow it, where we get more sponsorships into hockey.
So right now it's less sponsorships, more out of pocket.
Yes.
So you're going to hit a glass ceiling for people. I just can't quite afford that.
Yes. And another part that's made it very difficult is once you get up north, you're okay to, you can drive to your games, where when you're in Dallas, you have to fly to wherever you're going because there's no real competition nearby. You have to fly to a Michigan, a Minnesota, and even, you know, some of your other non-traditional markets in Arizona and in California where hockey's continuing to grow, but you have to fly there. And that, once again, adds on to the cost, where once you get up north, you can drive, you know, 30 minutes to an hour, and you're within a reach of plenty of teams that you can compete against.
So it kind of puts the warm weather cities behind the 8 ball as far as sponsorships and money going out. Like you're gonna have to put out a lot of money in order to be a part of the top competition. In most cases, is that fair to say?
Yes, it is.
So tell that's fascinating, dude. Like this is really cool. Thank you for sharing this. Let's talk a little bit about your story. What was the route that you went? You know what I mean? You're in Dallas. You're not in the cold weather. You know what I mean? So I would like to assume that somebody was putting out some money for you to do what you did, and where did you end up? You know, going from, let's say, middle school on.
So once I started really playing competitively in net, I was playing in Dallas, and then when I was a sophomore in high school, and within the USA.
What team was you playing with in Dallas before you tell the other part?
So I was playing for a team called the Dallas Oilers, and they within hockey there's it's like your farm system in baseball. There's AAA, which is your highest, your AA, and your single A. We were a AA team, so we were playing AA hockey. I tried out and within the USA hockey system, in order to make Team USA, that starts when you're 14 years old. You try out with your state, and then you go regional, and then to the Team USA camp where they actually select for Team USA. Okay. So I went to the Texas tryout, and I was one of the goalies selected to the regional tryout. And I went out to Utah to try out there. And that is during that state tryout is when I was first noticed at a prep school in Ohio called Gilmour Academy. Okay. And once you get there, it's a lot like your prep schools in basketball now, where you're going to get a lot of tuition help and all of that nature. So that is when
they give you some assistance, and this was the route that you end up taking. Is that correct?
Correct. So I ended up going to play high school hockey in Cleveland, Ohio, for 2 years, my junior and senior year. And for warm weather city players, it is not uncommon to see them go play up north once you get older. It's very common. So that is why hockey is one of the reasons continuing to grow up north more so than in the south, is because once you get to a certain age, you are growing to go play up north. But it is also growing in the south, where if you have the money, and that's always seems to be the key, you can go play very competitively now on a team that is going to be competitive, but it always is going to come back to, do you have the money?
So it's the money thing. So we're talking about in hockey, that somebody has to have money for you to be able to perform or at least compete at the highest level, whether it's coming from you or it's coming from some sponsorship, right?
Yes,
so
correct.
Now you're seeing a lot of the southern states having to come more out of pocket, and there's already a pipeline up north. So the top players in the South usually go to another prep school. So that's very common, correct?
Yes, it's very common. It's either a prep school or it would be what's called juniors within hockey. And juniors is an age range between 16 and 21. And what it is it's essentially like playing for a professional team, in a sense that your main job is you're playing hockey. So for juniors, and it's not the route that I took, but it's a way that, you're going to play up north, and there's different levels within juniors, different leagues of that nature. So as we see hockey growing in the South, we do see more junior teams in the South, but traditionally they're going to be in the northern markets.
I'm trying to tie all this together, dude. Like my mind is blown right now. It seems to be, first we hear is money. It's a money sport.
Yeah.
Everything ties into money at some form, especially as you get towards the top, but it's expensive just to participate. Then in each level, there's branches within each level.
Yes.
Crazy. So there's a difference between junior route and there's a difference between prep route.
Yes. Wow. There's a difference.
There's a major difference between those two. So how did it feel, a young gentleman from the Dallas, the DFW area in Cleveland, Ohio? I would imagine that your parents were still back in Dallas, correct?
They were, correct.
Okay, so what's going on up there? Give me a quick synopsis of that. Are you homesick? You know what I mean? There's a lot of pressure, because if we're bringing you in, I know from sports, there's going to be a certain expectation of level of play. How did that tie into grades, confidence, the depression, or how is your mental state with all of this, dude?
So there was pressure. Obviously, if you come up there, number one, they're not used to people coming from Texas because it's not a traditional market. So for them, that's, a whole new avenue. You get a Canadian in the same dorm as you, and they're like, you're from Texas, you don't know how to play hockey. Right. So that's, one part right there, when you're in a dorm with a Canadian, you don't know hockey. So that right there puts you at, in a way, in a different situation, because people judge you just because of where you're from.
Where you came from.
Yeah.
They're like, dude, because Canada got the system. And
yes.
And that's like another 5-hour conversation. You're from the United States, let alone you're from a non-traditional hockey place. What are you even doing here as my roommate?
Yeah.
How'd that make you feel? Did that anger you? Did that drive you? Did that make you feel bad? Like, you know what I mean?
It drove me, because to me, I was wanting to represent Texas. There's a lot of pride in where you're from. So for me, it drove me. I want to show, no, we can play hockey in Texas. We're good at hockey now,
You're a minority inside of your own sport.
Yeah.
Fascinating. This is fascinating. So you're a minority coming from there. So you're like, nah, I can get this done. So what happens?
So, I played, I did not make the top team while I was there. There's multiple teams. There's multiple teams within. I didn't even make the top team while I was there, but I still played very competitive hockey. It's varsity hockey. There's another team that's above that, but I was playing varsity. So for me, and part of the reason was because I was from Texas. The other goalies trying out for the team, for the top team, they were from Pennsylvania, a traditional hockey place. They were from Canada, another traditional hockey place. And the only other one was from Florida, and that was the one that wasn't from a traditional hockey market.
Can I stop you right there, right? This is fascinating because of, you're giving free game about this sport. There's correlations to the sport that I grew up in, basketball, but there's totally different elements. So what was the main difference with the traditional versus the non-traditional based on your experience? Is it the experience, the actual resources that are given to you at an early age, the competition that they see at an earlier age that gives them the advantage? What gives them an advantage over somebody that's a bit non-traditional?
I would say the two biggest differences is, number one, access to coaching, which we're actually done a phenomenal job in Texas of having former professional players who want to stay here and coach because it's a warm weather city. They're from up north, and, they're like, I'm liking this warm winters. I can wear flip-flops in January and I'm happy. So you're seeing that, which is something where, it's not the gap that it used to be, number one. And number two, it's the access to competition. For them, they have 10 teams within their area that they can go play that are great teams where, Texas, you have to go fly anywhere that you want to go play for a competitive team. You have to fly to go play a competitive team when you're in Texas.
And I would imagine that they can even do what we consider in basketball, like open run, or we can go to the park. They can probably just meet up with a bunch of buddies at the pond, and it's frozen. Yeah. And then we can get a lot of, kind of some backyard hockey where you can hone your skills, and you can't really get that in the warm weather places. How's California doing in this? They're traditionally a strong state for sports. Are they a player in this thing now? What's going on? Have they created some resources? Are you seeing some of the warmer weathers doing some of the things like you said in Tennessee? Is this up a lot?
Within the last 5 to 10 years, you're really starting to see the warm weather cities and how well they've been able to develop hockey players. A Florida, a California, an Arizona, and a Texas, all your non-traditional hockey markets. Well, in the 90s is when a lot of these places were getting their NHL teams. And now that you see as these kids are growing up with hockey there, that it's continuing to grow, and they've done a phenomenal job. So for the under 20 national tournament, there were 4 kids from California on the Team USA, where you're seeing that more and more kids from warm weather cities are able to be successful. But the always key is they kind of have to move off once they get old enough to go play somewhere else.
Do you see that changing to where we don't have to fully relocate because now you have teams like the Kings, the LA Kings that won a championship. You know, you got your Tampa Bay Lightnings of the world and San Jose Sharks. Like you have teams, you know, the Phoenix. You have teams in warm weather cities that have had successful NHL teams, which I would imagine the youth is watching and inspiring, and then most likely there's probably a connection to the community, probably the higher dollar communities, to where do you see that they don't have to export themselves to these colder weather? That's just going to be the pipeline, you know, for the foreseeable future. Is that something that you see?
I see it both ways. I see where the opportunities for a kid in a warm weather city are continuing to grow and they're getting more teams at the top level. But I also see it that, because in order to get to the recruiters, you have to move up there for them to see you. You have to find a way to get up there because if you want to go play college hockey, your college hockey is in Minnesota, in Michigan, and there's a couple teams in Ohio, and Notre Dame has a team in Indiana, and then the rest are going to be in New York, in Massachusetts, Rhode Island. Those cities or those states are the teams with the college hockey teams. So you have to find a way to put yourself in front of them. And that's one of the biggest keys and why kids still move up north is, if you want to go play college hockey, you have to put yourself in front of them.
And that's where they're going to be. So it's going to be really hard to uproot that because there's a system, and it sounds like an old system. It's really hard to change old systems. You can add branches to it, but most likely, like we're the pipeline. Y'all come to us. That fair to say?
Yeah, it's fair to say that northern cities are where the pipeline is still, even though the branches are getting added into the warmer cities. There's only two warm weather city NCAA Division I hockey teams, and that's Alabama Huntsville and Arizona State. And Arizona State's still a newer team. They were created less than 10 years ago.
Wow. That's crazy. So what would it take for somebody like myself, you know what I mean? A young black guy that's growing up, not a whole lot of money in New York, but I would like to play hockey. I just seen the Rangers, man. I like what they got going on. Is there really any way for me to get involved outside of you need probably a sponsored Rangers type of a situation to even get involved? Or it's just like, man, you really are going to have trouble breaking into this sport and you're probably going to have to play another sport.
It's becoming more and more common to see, kids being able to get into that system where once you get in, you're younger, you learn how to skate and you start learning how to play. And at the younger ages where USA Hockey's been very successful is that they've been able to start creating more programs to allow players to try hockey for free and start playing for free. And then at that point, it's finding a way to make it happen from there, and there's more and more places that are being able to help players play for free.
Got it. So you kind of piggybacking what you told me earlier. So there is a recognition of there is talent outside of who's already playing, which is just the predominantly white demographic that has the money and the resources. If we branch out a little bit, we can maybe even grab some of that talent and then we can create another avenue. And you're seeing that happen more and more, correct?
Correct.
Perfect. So thank you for this, man, because I'm learning. I'm learning. I haven't even put on a pair of ice skates in my life. I'd like to change that. But this is not my world. But there is a lot of correlation into it because, sports, one of the main things is, try to get to the highest level. What is your goal at the prep school now? What are you thinking? What is your end goal for finishing up? And then what was the next step?
So what makes hockey so unique is, if you want to go play NCAA hockey, which there's only 65 NCAA teams, you have to go 65 NCAA Division I teams.
That's it.
That's it. So to put it in perspective, more basketball teams make the NCAA Division I tournament than there are hockey teams.
Division I hockey teams. That's it.
That's it.
65 of them. This was news to me until you told me. So
yeah,
this is going to be new. That's just not a lot.
No.
How many people are on the roster, give or take?
And there's 30 players on the roster.
So you multiplied the 65 times 30. That's how many Division I hockey players do.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why, if you want to go play there, hockey's so unique. And what I was talking about is juniors, is you go play juniors, and that's because the NCAA teams see that as a way to allow you to progress your skills. You're getting older, you're getting more mature, you're getting bigger, and you're getting stronger. So they see that as, okay, we can take you when you're 20 or 21, you're an older, more mature player, and then we still have you for 4 years. Where, there's levels within that juniors. There's your tier 1, which is what's called the United States Hockey League, and that's a free to play league. And then there's the tier 2 North American Hockey League, and that's a free league to play in as well. However, once you hit the tier 3, there's a multitude of leagues. However, you have to pay for them all.
So when you mean free to play, now free to play means it's not recreation type stuff. We just come in. These are some of the top players, right?
Yes. So somebody's funding, somebody's sponsoring these teams, correct? Yes. So when I say free to play, it's almost like a semi-professional team. And the only difference for these players is they're not getting paid so that they can keep their NCAA eligibility. So they're coming in, there's gear sponsors, there's sponsors from local hotels, there's sponsors from everywhere around the community to put money into this team. But the difference is, from a business standpoint, you don't have to pay the players because they're going to keep their NCAA eligibility that way.
So it's almost like an extension of the NCAA.
It is. It's almost as a way to think of it, is a way to, as it's almost like the minor leagues to get into the NCAA.
Yeah, so you're right underneath the NCAA. So you got guys in the NCAA that are older, and this is the opposite of what you see in basketball. If you hit 21 years old, they don't even want to draft you. You're too old. Where come to my college at 22 years old. Come to the University of Wisconsin, and you can stay 4 years, and then we can talk about your NHL draft status while you're like 25 years old. Is that fair to say?
Well, the NHL draft still happens when you're 18. You're 18 when you're drafted.
So that's not like you're still old there. There's different levels within the levels, is what you're saying again.
Yeah. Once again, there's still different levels within the levels. So once you're 18 is when you're drafted into the NHL. So oftentimes you've probably already committed to a college when you're younger, and that college coach is the one watching you and saying, all right, keep playing juniors, help me allow you to get older and more mature. So once you get to me, you're a better player. But as well as, there are still players within juniors that will commit, once they're older, to play college hockey.
So if you're in juniors, you're still eligible for the NHL draft?
Yes.
Because it's like a minor league system for.
Yes.
So depending on your draft status, do you have to go, or is it like baseball where I can decide to go to the NCAA instead?
So once you get drafted into the NHL, you can still go play NCAA hockey, and that's very common as a way for the NHL teams to help prepare you to bring you up to the NHL, is for you to go play NCAA hockey. You don't lose your NCAA eligibility once you're drafted into the NHL. And that's something that's very unique in it.
This is a lot. So these junior teams are these, I'll imagine they're probably in some of the smaller towns up north.
Yeah. So
are they marketing these teams? Are they marketing them almost like minor league teams, or is it kind of tucked off and you just find it how you find it?
So the United States Hockey League, it's marketed like a semi-professional hockey league, in that, it's almost the exact same as going to a minor league hockey game, in that, you got all these young kids, and the only difference is they are young kids. So, they're going for fans, they're doing all that, and it's primarily in smaller cities. In the Midwest, there's a lot of teams in Iowa. There's a few teams in Nebraska. So it's in some of the smaller cities. Dubuque, Iowa is one of the teams that's had a lot of success within the United States Hockey League.
And these kids are not getting paid. So they're not getting paid for their name, image, and likeness.
Nothing.
So they're there. Is school involved with the juniors? How does that work? Or is it, you're pretty much almost done with that? How does that work? You know what I mean? As far as like high school education and stuff like that, if you catch a kid that's 16.
So more and more you're seeing these kids that will go do online high school so that they can play juniors.
So they'll get like their GED type thing?
No, so there's
high school. Get a degree online.
Yes, you'll get your high school degree. So it's a high school diploma that's just from an online high school now.
And I would imagine with the COVID situation right now, that's kind of what's going on across the nation. So it blends right in with that whole situation.
Yeah. And there are some teams that will work with you and say, hey, you know, we have a high school here and you're going to go live with what's called a billet family while you're here. You're living with a family that's going to take you in. And so at that point, you know, you have your billet family, you're living with them. Depending on, you know,
so you're going across the country and it's not like a dorm room or anything like that. You go and stay with a family?
Yes. So if you're in juniors, you go live with a family. It's called a billet family, and you're going to live in someone else's house with them.
And this is like a setup from the team. Like somebody's like, yeah, I'll willingly bring these kids in, and it's almost a revolving door. So like this is one of the same families will rotate kids in, or is it?
Yes, they rotate. You know, there's trades within these leagues, like it's a semi-professional league. So you could.
So then you go from that house to another house.
Yeah, you wouldn't. So if you know you get traded to a different team, you go move to a different house. You know, and somewhere else, wherever you're traded to.
And they just treat you like, you know what I'm saying, like you're part of their family while you're here.
Yes.
With them and all that type of stuff.
Yep.
My mind is blown. I had no idea. So this is very common.
Mm-hmm. And that's
so you have multiple players in one house. So you having, you know, if you got a 25-man roster, you got 25 families.
It just depends. You know, there's certain families, you know, their kids are older and they're working on their own now. So they like having, you know, the younger kids come in to live back in their house again. They love that, you know, it's a chance for them to have kids again in a way. So they'll have 2 or 3 kids sometimes. And there are, you know, some families that, you know, they have a young kid. So they see it as a chance to have a role model for their kid to look up to that's living with them.
So have you had, and we can be brief on this part, have you heard any type of situations to where any of those things went awry, where all of, you know what I mean? Like you're going into another person's home. You don't really know these people. You know, has there been any type of clashing or abuse, any mistreatment going on from any stories that you know of?
So, you know, you hear about some of the smaller things. You know, one of the things that's more unique is because there's so many Canadians that play hockey. When they come to the States and they're 19 years old, they're drinking already in Canada. They come to the States and to them, you know, they hate that the drinking age here is 21. So that's one of the only real things, you know, that little things like that. But
they can drink at 18 at Canada, correct?
19 in all of Canada except Quebec. Quebec is 18.
Right. So 19.
So when I was living,
you might get a little pushback there, like, hey man, but now you're across the board. Okay. So
yeah.
That's about what you heard. Fascinating.
But that's, you know, really small things like that would be the only thing. But typically coaches are so strict when you're, you know, once you're there, you know, it's, you know, none of that, you know, you can't do it.
No, we can't do that, man. We're trying to run a tight ship. So essentially you're a commodity right now.
Yes, essentially you are, especially when you're playing in the leagues that are free. You know, once you get to the pay to play leagues, which that's where a majority of your guys are, you know, it's a little different in that, but you can, even if you're paying to play, you still can get traded like, you know, you're a professional player.
Wow. So I paid to be here, but 1 week later, I'm there. I'm in Kansas now.
Yeah. And so, and that's
Nebraska. That is wow. Okay.
And that's something they've actually started to get a little bit stricter about is, you know, you have to, now they say you have to request a trade if you're not happy with the situation that you're in, but
yeah,
you know, that's something that's changing a little.
Yeah, a little bit, but not as much. Wow. So how do we end up University of Kentucky hockey? And tell me about
So because NCAA hockey is so limited, I decided that, you know, I didn't want to go play juniors because once you're in juniors, it's very tough. You're not getting the education anymore. So I said, you know, I want to go play somewhere where I can go straight from college or from high school to college. I didn't choose to play. I did not want to play juniors. That was the choice that I had made. So I was looking at what a league called the American Hockey or American Collegiate Hockey Association. And that's ACHA for short. So I decided that, that would be one of my best routes, was to go play ACHA hockey. And I'd actually just had a friend that went to the same prep school as me that was like, hey, we're looking for goalies, give our coach a call and kind of go from there. Because even within this league, there's still recruiting, even though the school doesn't have to put funding into your team because you're no longer NCAA. It's still competitive where there's recruiting and everything of that nature.
Wow. Wow. So we in the basketball world know UK as a basketball school.
Yes.
A plethora of big time players there. What is college hockey like? We haven't even talked about the family dynamic. What's going on? How are the coaches in this? Is it a lot of same personalities? And because I said intense sport. This is an intense sport. Is there a lot of intense guys? Do we even got any type of laid back guys going on in the coaching?
So within college hockey, there's definitely becoming a growing divide in the style of coaches, because there's the younger coaches that are called the players coach, and that they're a little less intense and it's more, kind of go with the flow. But you still have some of the older, more traditional coaches, and they're going to be your tougher coaches. And so when I was there, the first coach I played under my freshman year was more of a relaxed coach. And then that culture wasn't a strong culture as a team. Right. So as a team, they brought in a very tough coach and very old school, very traditional, but it changed the culture. We became a winning team because of it. So, it just depends on the team that you're on.
Wow. So how is it like with the family? Because you're spending a lot of time away from the family. How is that? What's the family situation? Like brothers, sisters, mom, dad, how are they feeling? Because they understand, they understand a little bit more about the hockey world. And if they don't, they're finding out as they go with you. How are they feeling about the whole situation?
For my parents, they were always supportive, and it was like, if this is what you want to do, go do it. They were always supportive of, this is what you want to do, go do it, enjoy it and have fun, and let's see where it takes you. So they were always supportive about it, and for my mom, she was especially happy when I went to go play prep school hockey, because more than anything, it allowed me to get a better education out of it more than anything else. The education aspect was especially important. And that was something that prep school hockey was able to provide for me.
That's awesome. I mean, it gives you a whole different experience as a young man. How do you feel like it shaped you at that age? Was you homesick? Is it something that you see amongst other players, or is a lot of that homesick? Are you fighting each other because of the frustration, or what's going on?
So when you're 16 and you go move away from home, I'm 1,000 miles from home. Yes, there's some small homesickness, but everybody there's going through the same thing. Yeah. So a lot of it comes down to you become a family with one another, and you really turn to each other. When you're living in a dorm with kids that are 16 to 18 years old, you really become a family with one another. You really get to know each other, because that's who you go talk to when you're having a problem. Because your mom and dad aren't there, you go talk to them. That's who you go talk to. So it's definitely something that, I cherish now, looking back at it, that, I have some great friends for life that I still talk to now that I'm 22. 4 years later, we're talking about going and seeing each other at our 5-year reunion this year.
Right. This is a fascinating lifestyle because it's unlike a lot of other sports, but you're also seeing the element of the bonding that happens within pretty much all the sports. When you spend enough time with your team, your coaching staff, it seems pretty automatic. Everybody that I've had a conversation with has said pretty much the same thing. There is a bonding that goes with it. So I think that's universal. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
So you're in a basketball town playing hockey. Are y'all playing even Louisville? Like who do y'all play? Because there's only 65 teams. Are you part of the SEC? What does this look like?
So because we're part of the ACHA, we're not one of those 65 teams that's Division I NCAA hockey.
You're classified as Division One. You're classified as.
So we're not even a part of NCAA at all. We're completely the ACHA is a separate entity in of its own. So there's even different levels within ACHA where your Division One ACHA is extremely competitive. Those schools are putting money into the team. Some schools have rinks on campus now and all that. We're considered a Division Two ACHA team. So we are going down to Louisville. We're playing in Xavier, Cincinnati. We would play teams like Ohio University. And that's where we're kind of focused. And within the ACHA, there's over, I believe, 250 teams within the ACHA now. So that's one of the things where ACHA's really outgrown the NCAA in number of teams because the cost to fund it to field a team in the ACHA is just so much lower.
So we're talking about money.
Yes.
So this is the reason why we're only seeing 65 Division One teams.
Yes. So we're not even an NCAA Division One team. We're actually in a different league in of itself.
And why do you think that is? Is this because of the return on investment, the ROI for putting out money? If you're a school, what's the return on investment for a hockey program? Do you think that's one of the main reasons?
There's two reasons why. Number one, it's because within NCAA Division One ice hockey, you have to add another women's team of equal number of scholarships. That's Title IX, and as well as the cost to field a team. Because hockey is an expensive sport of its nature, NCAA requires you to have a rink on campus. That in and of itself makes it more expensive to field a team because it's so expensive to have a rink on campus. Plus, you have all the equipment in the travel that, it's hard to make hockey a sport that's making money if you're not a big school where, as we call a hockey school.
Wow, you're taking money from it because we got to think about it. The ice itself is expensive, right? Then when
Yes.
you play, you're going to create all kinds of divots and stuff in the ice. So you need the Zamboni machine to smooth it out. Then you have to keep it kind of cold, I would imagine, so the ice doesn't melt, right?
Yep.
Then you need somebody that's utilizing it when you guys are not utilizing it, so it makes sense to keep it on campus. Who's going to utilize it?
So once you get a team on campus, you have to basically have all the younger kids playing at night when you're not practicing your U8, your U10, all those younger teams. Those are the ones that are going to be taking up that ice time. And then, on weekends, you're going to have your public skate to allow, the general public just to come skate. And oftentimes they'll build two actual rinks, two sheets of ice within a rink, so that you can always have another event going on the other sheet of ice. And that's where, you see that you have to have so much other hockey involved to keep this rink open, where a town like Lexington, Kentucky, the hockey demand is not there to put a team on campus, to have enough events outside of University of Kentucky ice hockey to have a team. And that's one of the reasons why UK doesn't have an NCAA Division I ice hockey team, is because of that cost of just having a rink and having the scholarships. And once you get that done, you still have other things such as figure skating that are going to help bring in money as well. There's just not the demand there to, for the economics to work in order to have that team on campus.
It doesn't make sense to the bottom line. I'm
Yes.
going to lose a whole lot more money than I have coming in for certain schools. I'm a basketball school. We have the Kentucky Derby, which is a high dollar. We have that. Hockey is not going to be appealing enough to our demographic to be able to make it a Division I sport.
Yes.
So that's just one example of many examples, because myself included, you automatically think because you're UK, you're Division I hockey, because you're Division I everything. So there's multiple other sports multiple other schools that are doing it the same way. And you mentioned a couple that you're playing. So it makes a lot of sense. It comes down to the dollar.
It does.
It comes down to the dollar. So how if we're talking to some of the young kids, this whole process, what does it all the way look like? What are these kids are going to experience? Let's say the ones that have the funding, and then the ones that maybe just have enough, or maybe not quite enough. What is the difference experience, if any, for
So
you kind of
when
touched upon it, but you know what I mean? Let's player A, player B type of thing. What is it
yeah,
that's so different?
so your player A's, your parents that are very well off financially, and that they can go play whatever hockey they want to, depending on their skill level. If they can make the top team, they go play that hockey, and because cost isn't an option to them, so they kind of go play. At they go play that top level hockey, and they have the more opportunities, and their parents can afford for them to go do training on the side, and they can do private lessons. Some players are doing 2 or 3 private lessons on their own a week in order to get better at hockey. So that
How
right
many?
there, 2 or 3 private lessons a week, depending on the player. I know kids that, a lesson in, because hockey, once again, is a more expensive sport. They're doing, a lesson can be upwards of $60 for a private lesson just for an hour. So that's one of the reasons why you see that money once again, unfortunately, becoming an option. Where player B, he's going to go practice, with his team, and he's going to go play on a team that doesn't cost quite as much money, so he's not getting as great as competition. And then they want to do more ice time on their own. They can do it because you can go skate for $15 for the hour, but you're not getting the coaching that player A is getting from the private lesson.
And you're seeing a dramatic difference. Are you seeing that's player A and player B in the United States, correct? What about
Correct.
these different countries that are coming into hockey? Because hockey, have a nice pipeline coming in from Canada. I know Finland is really good. I know Russia is really good. So I know they have their own thing. How does that tap in? How does that tap into juniors? And do you have these guys come in at an early age, or they do their thing and I see you in the NHL?
You you really see players coming over to the United States to come play from all over the world. I mean, I had a kid from Switzerland in the dorm with me at my prep school in Cleveland, Switzerland, and we had kids from Canada because they're trying to go play NCAA hockey, where there is still a pipeline in those countries where Canada has their own unique pipeline within their system. But you also see players that want to go play college hockey. And so Canadian hockey within their pipeline, it's not as academic focused as the United States, where once you're good enough, Canadian college hockey is almost an afterthought there. They don't really have college hockey. It exists, but if you're going to go keep moving on to play, you actually go play in what's called the Canadian Hockey League, which is a juniors league. But once you're in that league, you actually get paid a very small amount. So you've lost your NCAA eligibility. So that's one of the main differences, is that you're seeing, within Canada, that if you want the education, you come to the States, where, a lot of players understand at a younger age, they're not going to the NHL. So they come to the States trying to get the college scholarship. But once again, that's just so limited because there's only 65 schools that offer a
About
scholarship to
2,000
play
kids.
hockey.
That's only about 2,000 kids, and we're talking about young men and women uh, coming from across the world, right? And I would imagine we're talking about hockey across. We're naming cold weather places and predominantly white demographics. They're recognizing the pipeline. If I can't get to the NHL like that, the United States is going to be able to help me set up for life after hockey.
Yes.
So now you're not just competing this small pool inside of these branches for just the United States, but there's other countries coming in.
Yes.
So that makes it really tough to even get to the highest level.
Yes, it does. It really does. And that's one of the things that makes hockey so unique, is that, one of the recruiting services did an interview recently on a podcast, and he equated it to your 5-star and 4-star prospects. They're going to play your Division 1 ice hockey.
Okay.
Then your 4 stars and your 3 stars, they're going to go play your Division 3 ice hockey because there is no Division 2. And then your 3 stars and below, they're going to play what's called the ACHA hockey. And that's kind of how everything sets up. and so many schools have ACHA hockey. That's actually where a multitude of kids end up going to play.
You have Division III, but no Division II. So you're saying that these, kind of like 3-star guys are in Division III. What's their experience there? Because in basketball, when you think Division III, it's a step above high school, not super, super strong. You really have to pay. There's no scholarships granted in that. From basketball standpoint, you're pretty much paying to get your education and continue playing. And you have some cases like Duncan Robinson where, get taller and do things, but mostly like this is the end of the road for me as far as my sport. Division III hockey is not quite like that. Am I right?
It's not quite like that. So schools cannot offer athletic scholarships, but they will offer the academic scholarship for players who come play hockey. But, and it is very actually similar to the ACHA. And for a lot of players, yes, it is the end of the road. They know that, I knew that when I got to University of Kentucky, more than likely it was going to be the end of the road. There's a few players within the ACHA that, if you really want to, you can go play professionally somewhere, whether it be overseas in Europe or some of the lower leagues in America, where in Division III, some of those players will go play minor pro hockey and of that nature. However, it is definitely a lot more competitive. And the way I've thought about hockey within colleges, your Division I ice hockey is going to be your Power 5 teams in a basketball or a football. And then it drops to your Division III ice hockey is your players that are going to go play your lower levels of Division I. Yeah. And then at that point, your ACHA hockey that I played, that's your Division II and Division III guys, where even ACHA hockey, though, is getting competitive, where schools are putting more money into it, where they'll have a rink on campus like a Liberty University in Virginia. Their ACHA program is absolutely phenomenal, and they can go compete with some of the Division III teams. Wow. So Division III just varies depending on where you're going to play. There are some Division III teams that are really good and competitive. However, there's some lower level Division III teams where the school's not putting quite as much money in, and they can go play that they could compete with some of the ACHA teams.
So all of this stuff is blowing my mind because I'm hearing a lot of depends. I'm hearing a lot of this depends on this depend. So hockey's not really clear cut across the board. It really depends on your money situation, your where you're located. You know what I mean, along with the skill set and the opportunity that's given to you. And is that fair to say?
It is fair to say. It really is. Where you're located in your money situation. Because even where you're located, and once again, as you said, it depends. When you're in a colder city, you don't quite need as much money to, make it as a higher level as you do if you're in a southern city.
And you also get, they lower the funding because you got sponsorship, and then you also have that opportunity to skate for free on the ponds 4 or 5 months of the year when it's frozen during the wintertime. So that's a whole lot of hours of extra reps that you're not getting here unless you have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So excuse me, a lot of guys know at a certain time that, this is probably going to be the end of the road for me and everything like that. How does that make you feel like when you get in there? Is it a letdown, or is it like, listen, man, I had a great run. I love what it produced for me. And it sounds like you was already thinking about this. This is one of the reasons why you picked UK. That there's I'm assuming there's a certain major that you was looking at and even starting life after hockey. Is that fair to say too?
Yeah, and one of the things that makes ACHA more appealing is, if you want to go to a bigger school like a UK, you're able to do that over playing Division III. Division III hockey is your smaller schools. Yeah. I was, looking for a school where I had, a more complete experience, you could say, because, I wanted to go to a bigger school. I was definitely looking at having, I did not want to go to a smaller Division III school because Texas high schools are so big. To me, I was like, all right, I'm going to a small school where there's more kids at the high school I was at in Texas than at this college. Right. And so for me, I was like, I want to go to a bigger school. And this is one of the things where ACHA is attracting better players is, if you want the more all-around experience of school, you go play ACHA hockey now. I was able to go to football games when we didn't have hockey. I'd go to basketball games and things of that nature. And, absolutely loved my college experience because of where I ended up, where you see guys that play Division III hockey that don't get that experience of college.
That's well put, man. I appreciate how you broke that down. That's well said. You do get a well-rounded experience by going to these schools because they have the funding to bring in top-level talent in different sports, and you get to appreciate that. You also have all of the different things around campus and on campus because of the funding. A lot of it comes down to funding. And so what would you say the overall state of hockey is? Do you see a big shift from years ago? I think you kind of tapped into a little bit of it. Do you see it continue to evolve, or do you think it's going to kind of stay put in this area for hockey? And then what does that look like?
So I see it continuing to evolve. I see where there's more and more teams making a bigger push to outreach to communities that used to not be able to get hockey. And, with the success of some of these Southern NHL teams, those demographics are going to continue to shift of getting more kids from non-traditional markets. You see that changing. And Nashville, as I've mentioned before, has done a great job of getting hockey in the community. You go to the Predators rink and you can see boxes upon boxes stacked up of stuff that's going to be shipped to schools so that they can play even just ball hockey within their gym for, and that all that equipment's been provided for them. So you see more and more of that outreach to communities and in hockey, and especially in cities that aren't traditional hockey cities. That's where you're seeing more and more rinks being built right now.
So from your perspective, your opinion, when you start to involve more demographics, more economic levels, so now you have the Hispanic, you have the young Black athlete, the young white athlete, Native American, like all of these different, everybody is included. Where do you see the level of play? Do you think that is going to change? Will it improve? I mean, will you see the athleticism? Do you see it even improving, or it's about where it's at? Is it different now than it once was, the actual play of hockey?
You see the level of play continuing to improve in hockey, mainly because as we start hockey's done one of the sports where the off-ice training has been so begun to be so evolved that because you're not able to access the rink as much, you see that your strength and conditioning training is becoming just as important. And that's actually something that's helped create more equality throughout hockey for all levels, because once that's been included, you're seeing more athleticism, you're seeing more speed, and hockey's become, the hits are becoming stronger. Shots are faster because you've gotten so focused on the off-ice training as well.
So you're getting a bit more dry land than your father's teams.
Yes.
Teams. So your teams are including places like myself, Fit Lab, you know what I mean? And this is
Yes.
something you can attest to, because last summer, you had a fitness goal before you went back to school. And we worked and you did very well in that. And, and you told me that it helped. So you're seeing these things being more included as a resource, where before it was just go work on your skill and be tough. It'd be rough.
And what we've seen more and more is, it used to be that, you came to training camp, you hadn't touched your hockey gear since the previous season ended, and now in today's hockey world, you're playing, depending on where you are, not quite year round, but you can play year round. But, I got done with, when I was in prep school, I got done with hockey. I'd play, lacrosse after that. And then once lacrosse was over, you start training for hockey again in the summer, where it used to be in hockey, your training camp is the first time you were starting to play again. And so guys are coming into training camp ready to go play. And so that's been a shift. And even, hockey has what's called morning skate, which is a lot like a shoot around for a basketball team,
right.
At your higher levels. That was because they needed to sweat out the alcohol from the night before. You've seen athletes become so specialized now that that, the morning skate's been almost eliminated from NHL hockey because teams don't need it anymore. A lot of teams are just like, to them, it's just, all right, we don't need to skate. We're ready to go already. So that's one of the things within hockey. And even all sports in general, you're seeing, people becoming so much more specialized into it, what they're doing, that you see all aspects, how they eat, how they train, all of that are really just so vital to playing hockey now.
So you're seeing the elevation, just like you see in all the other sports. They're tying in the stuff off of their field, court, or ice for you guys, and they're tying it into their lifestyle, and you're seeing a complete transformation, so to speak, in the game. Before it was a lot rougher, kind of like 3 yards in a cloud of dust football, to where now it's past, where you see all of this phenomenal skills from various people in hockey. Is that fair to say? Before you kind of knew the guy, now there's a lot of guys that can be talked about as one of the best players. Is that valid?
It's very valid. I mean, in the 80s, you had Wayne Gretzky. He was the guy in the NHL. Now you start saying, all right, well, you have a Sidney Crosby, who's a great all-around player, but you also have someone like an Alex Ovechkin, who's just a pure scorer. And then you have someone like a Connor McDavid, whose speed is otherworldly in the game. So he's able to create opportunities like that. So you see different styles that are all successful within hockey to be some of the best players right now.
Fascinating. And they're coming from all walks of life. And then we're also having a few more of the black athletes, and then we got Subban and a couple of other guys integrated into this. And do you see more? Do you see more minorities being incorporated in the game from your perspective?
Oh, for sure. Now you have a PK Subban, as you mentioned, and Evander Kane. They're all great players that are now creating that new dynamic of, and this is one of the things that's been so tough is for younger athletes, if they don't see, if you're a younger black kid and you don't see a black hockey player, it's hard to, see yourself being there. Where now we see that, and so you see them wanting to play hockey because they see someone like them playing the sport.
That's a fact. That's very valid. Somebody coming up like myself, there's nobody so you don't gravitate towards it. There's really none of those resources in my area. It's gonna have to be outside of my area. What's the point? So now you're getting these outreaches that are going closer and closer to these communities, and then you're seeing more people that have the same, melanated skin like them, and then they're actually good players. It's not like these are good players we're talking about. So has that hockey world accepted that demographic, or is there still a big uphill battle in that? Or they're just looking at, man, if you can get the job done, you're invited. So is this kind of a fine line between those things?
It's now become, if you can get the job done, you're going to play. It's really, that's where it's at. If you can get the job done, you're going to play. And one of the things that we're seeing now is, as more black athletes are playing, they can bring more speed than anybody. And that's one of the things that they love about having that on their team, is it brings a new speed element to your team that you used to not be able to have. So if you can get the job done, you're going to play. And so that's one of the things where hockey is just extremely accepting of, come play. It doesn't matter. If you can play, you're going to play.
That's awesome. Now, one of the biggest elements on ice, what is the biggest element? Is it the speed? Is it the strength? If you're putting a team together, because they always say speed kills. Does that correlate to hockey too? Do you want a lot of speed? I know it's a lot of moving parts to it, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. How important is the speed element to where you can get black, white athletes? Doesn't matter, like you said, Connor McDavid. He's difficult to deal with because of the speed. Do you want guys like that, like Tyreek Hill in football? Like, does that change the game?
It really just depends. And this is what makes hockey so unique. You have to have the whole package. You can have your specialization within what you want to do. You have a bigger player that's going to go into the corners, and in hockey, it's called grind it out. You're going to go win a corner battle to go get the puck. However, in hockey, you still have to be able to skate. You still have to be able to shoot and stick handle and pass. And that's the thing where within, a football or a basketball, you can have your specialization and be okay at the other stuff. Where hockey, if you're not good and you can't shoot, you're going to get left behind. And so hockey, you have to have the speed to even just keep up with the game. But if you have if you're like a Connor McDavid and you're the fastest player out there, it's an extra ability that you have, not necessarily where it's your only ability. That's one of the differences in hockey, where you can see a big that can't shoot. And actually in basketball, you're seeing that not happen as much. A big has to be able to shoot, where that's where hockey is. You have to be able to do everything, but what your specialization is within your team. Are you going to be the hitter? Are you going to be the guy that goes into the corner to win the battle? In hockey, are you going to be the guy that goes and sits in the front of the net? Are you going to go be a playmaker? Are you going to go be the guy that, scores, a pure goal scorer? So it just depends. And
it depends. Again,
it really depends.
Everything depends in hockey, but thank you for that. Now, is hockey essentially a star-driven sport? Is it more of a team sport, where inside of that you have, like basketball, it's 5 men on the court. If you have one, you're going to win a lot of games of the best guys on the court. If you have 2 of them on the court, you're going to. If you have 3 of the best guys on the court, you're going to dominate. Is that kind of the same thing, or is it a sum of the parts more so in hockey, similar to like a football?
I would say that it leans towards being a more complete team sport, because within hockey, if you go play a system of, we know we're not the most skilled team out there, so we're not going to give the other team the opportunity to showcase that skill and you utilize it in the game. You can go win. Hockey is a sport so much about playing as a team and playing your system correctly, where if you're not the more skilled team, you're going to play a system that takes away that from the other team, where there are your stars within the sport,
Sure.
but you can eliminate them from being the main guy, unlike basketball, where in hockey, especially once you get to the playoffs, you can take that star out and still go win, not have the star and go win a Stanley Cup.
And you've seen that. Yeah, you're seeing that the parity is unreal in NHL hockey. Not much separates you from the 1 and 8 seed like you see in other sports. And that's probably a testament to what you're saying. Also, you have teams that are coming and they're in playoff mode from a month out. You got the other team kind of in coast mode, and that can be a cause of upset. And it's not really an upset because the hockey community understands these things that what you're telling us. Is that fair to say?
It's 100% fair to say right now, because you have a team like the New York Islanders. They don't have a star on their team. Yeah. They just don't. But they find everybody chips into the team in some way, shape, or form, and they just play so well as a team. You don't want to see them in the playoffs. They're a tough team to beat, where in basketball, you have to have that star. You have to have that star in order to go win. Yeah. Where, in hockey is, we don't have that star, but we can all chip in, and, we're such a consistent team, because in the NHL, there's a salary cap. So once you hit your salary cap, your star is going to make so much money. Your lines 2, 3, and 4 aren't quite as good. And within hockey, you have to have 20 guys that can play, 20 guys plus your goalie that suit up every night. 20 guys are playing. And at that point, you have to be able to, play 4 lines consistently throughout the game in order to win, where your star is only out there, if you're a forward, a quarter to a third of the time, where in basketball, your star is going to be out there 75% of the game.
That's a fact. So let's get ready and wrap this up, because you're giving us too much free game. And I think with all of the branches inside of branches, we can create other branches and talk about. So maybe we'll have to do another sit down for that, another podcast for some more specific stuff. What do you feel like hockey has taught you about life? And then where you see it is showing or highlighting in terms of what we have going on in the United States?
So more than anything, hockey's taught me, if you put the work in, you're going to see the results. The work is, because hockey is such a sport where athleticism just can't take over like other sports. If you put the work in, that's what it takes to get to the next level. So that's one of the things that hockey's taught me. From a perspective, I've learned that it doesn't matter who's on your team. You're all one. You're all brothers once you step on that ice. So I'm still in contact with everybody, from my prep school in Ohio to all my buddies that I've played with. Once you play and you're in battle with them, you're brothers. So that is one of my favorite things. We still play fantasy leagues, all that together throughout. We're still in contact all the time. And because hockey's a sport where, it's not like football where you have so many guys, you really get to know everybody. You know everybody, and you absolutely just come to love everybody too. So that's another thing. It doesn't matter. Once you step on that ice, you're brothers. You don't care who they are.
That's beautiful. And what about the business? Because you and I have talked business and all these things. You're a unique young fella, very mature about seeing the world from the business perspective, and you're very, very direct. What about the business aspect that you see within hockey and how it correlates with the United States of America?
I would say, at the end of the day, within hockey, if you have the money, you're the one that's going to be able to do it. Where other sports, that's just not quite as true. And we've talked about that a lot today, but, unfortunately, it's not uncommon to see a kid with a dad that says, you're not good enough to make a team in this league, so I'll just go buy that team for you. That's one of the biggest things.
We'll start our own because we have the funds.
Yeah, we'll start our own because we have the money to do it. And that's something that's extremely unique to hockey, but, it is, it's something that you have to learn how to battle and overcome, because at the end of the day, those players will only go so far. Sure. If you're good enough, you're going to make it.
That's wow. So inside of that, like the money is going to allow you to have resources, and you're seeing that even in the United States for really all different demographics and races. So
and I think one thing I'd like to add on to the race that I didn't even think about, we now see one of the best defensemen in the NHL, Seth Jones. His dad's Popeye Jones of the NBA. Yeah. When his dad was in Colorado playing for the Nuggets, Seth was attracted to hockey. So you see him going to play hockey. He's actually from Dallas, raised, he moved to Colorado where he got into hockey, but his dad, he came back to Dallas. And you see that, number one, he's primarily from a non-traditional market in Dallas. And number two, you see what happens when you can put someone of that nature into hockey, what they can do. And he's now, considered one of the best defensemen in the NHL.
Fascinating, because you do have a certain athlete that can cross over to a lot of sports. They usually gravitate towards one sport or another because of the resources and what's being applied to them in that area, and then what's also being portrayed to them on the television. I see a lot of guys like this. I have the opportunity to go play this sport, but like you just said, Popeye Jones was a NBA athlete, different resources, different connections than others. He's in Denver. Colorado Avalanche is always pretty good around that time.
Yeah.
So I would like to play that, Dad. Let's do it. And then he was able to excel. So you're seeing with the opportunity, you're seeing some pretty marvelous things going on. So that's really fascinating. I think that also carries over to life, where you see in different neighborhoods, different walks of life across the country, if certain resources are poured into them, if something money is poured into them, in different opportunities are created, you can see some pretty marvelous things.
Yeah.
So, my man, I really appreciate this talk. I would like to keep going for hours and hours, but I'm not sure the viewers are quite ready for a marathon. We'll definitely talk offline and see how we can talk a little bit more about hockey, because I know from my background and a lot of my connections, this is brand new for them. But it's eye-opening because it crosses into the world that we live. You know what I mean? Sports is a big deal in the United States of America and across the globe. This is a pretty big sport. We have no idea about it because it's not in our neighborhood.
Yeah. And one of the things that I always talk about with hockey is, the TV contract's about to come up, and, a lot of hockey players want to see hockey on ESPN again, because that's going to bring the eyeballs in. It's getting hockey out there is because once people find it, they love it, but it's getting it out there.
Absolutely. People love crashing into people. That's why people like watching football. They just got to teach us how to.
Yes.
but it's not there. And like you said, man,
Not there.
the market is just the hockey market. So getting it on ESPN gets a different demographic, not just different, but all demographics watch ESPN. So that would be vital for that league. And I think even going back to the grassroots, especially with these outreaches, I really hope the NHL continues to do that. It creates another avenue for everybody, you know, from all walks of life to play a really unique sport. It's a difficult sport just to watch. I haven't even participated. It's hard, dude. There in Hicksville. There's a sports time or sports club that has a hockey rink in there with the basketball court. I'm going there for the basketball court. You have to walk by. I believe there's two, maybe one rink. It's been a while, and you're hearing that puck slam against the glass and seeing people hitting the glass, and then you look, and they're about 12 years old, and you're like, my word. I can imagine what Ovechkin is sounding like in there as a full-grown man. I'm gonna continue to walk to the basketball court. I don't know if I. So you have to be prepared for that way of life. But I think there probably are a couple of kids that will be very interested in that if that opportunity was given to them. So I appreciate that. And hopefully this will continue to spill out into all of the different things that we have going on inside of our country. Let's give some words of encouragement to the people and to anybody that's looking to get into the hockey world and life after it.
I'd always say find your nearest rink and just go skate for the first time. Because once you get on skates, you'll realize it's one of the best things in the world. So just go on Google, find your closest rink and go, find a way to do it, because once you get into it, you're going to love it.
That's valid. I'm really interested in going and at least trying. I'm not playing hockey. I'm way too old to even go. It's tough for me just to put on sneakers and play basketball. My body feels it. So I'll go and skate and support the hockey guys. I don't know if I'm going to play. So Eric, man, I'm really thankful, man. You're my guy, man. I celebrate everything that you have accomplished, man. I'm really proud of the young man that you're growing up to be. I'm very thankful to have a relationship with you through Fit Lab, through your dad, and y'all giving me an opportunity to work with you guys, on your fitness journey, and then us building a relationship even outside of Fit Lab, and then you being able to tell your beautiful story, and then the unique side of hockey and being very, very transparent with it. I really commend you for that, man, and much success to you moving forward, man.
Thank you for having me on. Let me get the word out.
I really appreciate it. I look forward to this podcast. And again, for everybody that's out there, please share this content. We're going to have a plethora of different athletes from all different walks of life. We're going to have younger and older athletes, all the different sports, male and female. So that way we're giving free game. We're giving free game. Everybody's experience is a little bit different, but we're all the same. You know what I mean? So let's show each other love and let's learn, and really want to pour into the youth, because you guys are the ones coming up. And parents, there's a lot of stuff that you may not know what you're getting into. You might want to take a look at these things, because it can shape and change, or one decision can shape and change the young athlete's life. So again, make sure y'all subscribe, click the bell. When a new content comes up, it's going to alert you guys. Comment, like, and share. I want to hear your feedback. Let me know anybody that you're interested in hearing from. We'll try to get them on. And for everybody else, y'all be safe out there. We got a lot of stuff going on. God bless you guys. Eric, once again, man, really appreciate your time, man. God bless you, boy.
Thank you.
Very welcome.